swing, Natasha Howard. In her 8th year, she also has a couple of 30s. And Mitchell trains the three.
Clark's arrival in the WNBA was supposed to be the kind of fairy tale story that every league dreams about. The sudden emergence of a transcendent superstar who not only dominates on the court but transforms the economics, visibility, and cultural relevance of women's basketball overnight. Yet instead of being embraced and celebrated as the generational talent that she clearly is, Clark has been caught in what appears to be the most explosive and disturbing scandal in modern professional sports, a scandal so far-reaching that it touches on civil rights law, federal oversight, institutional corruption, racial politics, and the very legitimacy of the WNBA as a professional sports league. And while fans around the world have flocked to her games, buying jerseys in record numbers, setting TV ratings on fire, and filling previously half-empty arenas with electricity, not seen in decades, behind the scenes, a sinister pattern has unfolded. One that many insiders now believe amounts to a coordinated campaign to neutralize, discredit, and physically punish her for daring to expose the league's mediocrity and for not fitting into the identity-driven narrative that certain executives, players, and media factions want to preserve. And the more you peel back the layers of this controversy, the harder it becomes to dismiss it as paranoia or fan bias. Because the evidence has mounted to the point where federal investigators, civil rights lawyers, and even influential media outlets like the Wall Street Journal have begun sounding the alarm, suggesting that what Caitlin Clark has endured goes far beyond rough basketball and into the territory of civil rights violations, workplace harassment, and potential criminal negligence by WNBA leadership under Commissioner Kathy Engelbert and with the silent complicity of NBA Commissioner Adam Silver. When Clark first entered the league as the most hyped rookie in WNBA history, her numbers at Iowa already positioned her as the greatest scorer the college game had ever seen, smashing NCAA records and building a fan base that spanned generations, with even people who had never cared about basketball before rearranging their lives around her games. But that success painted a target on her back the moment she donned an Indiana Fever jersey. Because while the WNBA needed her star power to survive, they also feared what she represented, proof that one player, a white rookie from the Midwest, could instantly outshine and overshadow veterans who had spent years trying to build the league's credibility without ever capturing mainstream attention. And from day one, Clark became the lightning rod for jealousy, resentment, and racially charged hostility that metastasized into deliberate targeting on the court and dismissive treatment off it. Viral replays show her being fouled repeatedly without whistles, sometimes hacked across the arms 3 or 4 times on a single possession with nothing called, and when commentators like Rebecca Lobo openly stated every single one of them is a foul, it confirmed what fans had already been screaming, that Clark was being officiated by a completely different standard. One that allowed opponents to batter her without consequence in a way that no other star in professional basketball would ever be forced to endure. This wasn't just physical basketball. It was a message, a systematic pattern designed to break her down physically, discourage her mentally, and remind her that she was not going to be protected by the league she was single-handedly saving. The stakes of this scandal become clearer when you consider the broader context. Civil rights law doesn't require someone to say the quiet part out loud for discrimination to be proven. If a pattern exists where one individual is consistently treated differently in a way that is tied to race, gender, or protected identity, that is enough to warrant scrutiny. And when A'ja Wilson herself, one of the most respected veterans in the WNBA and a multi-time MVP, admits publicly that race is a huge thing in the treatment of Caitlin Clark, that admission functions like Exhibit A in a civil rights case that could potentially dismantle the league's leadership. Add to that Sophie Cunningham's explosive statement about the WNBA's refusal to protect its star players, and you start to see the outlines of a whistleblower moment. One where insiders are no longer content to play along with denial and deflect strategy. Cunningham's words were not just about physical basketball, they were about institutional betrayal, about the league allowing its brightest attraction to be systematically punished because protecting her would expose the hypocrisy of leadership narratives about equality and fairness. The Wall Street Journal report only intensified the crisis by taking what fans and commentators had been shouting for months and laying it out in the most meticulous, prosecutorial fashion imaginable, not as opinion or speculation but as documented fact, connecting dots between officiating patterns, injury records, disciplinary failures, and internal league communications. building what amounted to a case file ready to be handed to federal prosecutors. And when the Journal, a paper that values its reputation far more than hot takes, stakes its credibility on allegations of civil rights violations, you know something seismic is happening. This isn't just about sports anymore. This is about whether the WNBA has engaged in conduct that could trigger federal intervention under civil rights law, labor law, and possibly criminal statutes. The government doesn't step in because a rookie thinks she's getting fouled too much. They step in when a pattern of abuse appears deliberate, racially motivated, and covered up by leadership. And that's exactly what Clark's case looks like right now. And what has Engelbert done in response? Nothing of substance. Just as she has in previous crises, she has hidden behind bland corporate statements, leaned on lawyers, and tried to ride out the storm. But this time, the storm is too big, because Caitlin Clark is too big to bury. She's not just another promising rookie. She is the lifeline of the WNBA, the only player capable of consistently drawing national headlines, generating sellout crowds, and commanding multi-million-dollar TV deals. She has done more for the league's relevance in a single season than decades of marketing campaigns ever accomplished. And yet instead of protecting her, the league has treated her like expendable property, a rookie punching bag for jealous veterans and a lightning rod for resentment about race, privilege, and attention. The irony is brutal. Without Clark, the WNBA reverts to irrelevance, with ratings collapsing back to a fraction of what she delivers, yet the league seems determined to undermine her anyway, exposing not just incompetence but a possible death wish driven by ideological rigidity. From a legal perspective, the implications are staggering. If Clark's treatment is determined to constitute a hostile work environment, the league could face federal lawsuits not only from her but potentially from sponsors, networks, and even government agencies tasked with enforcing civil rights protections. The phrase peaceful workplace isn't just abstract, it's law. Every employee, whether in a cubicle or on a basketball court, has the right to a non-hostile work environment. And when Clark herself says everybody is physical with me, they get away with things others don't. She is effectively laying the foundation for a claim that she is being systematically targeted in violation of that right. When coupled with mounting injuries, missed All-Star appearances, and career-threatening collisions that analysts openly say were preventable if officiating had done its job, you don't just have bad basketball, you have negligence. You have a commissioner who failed her most basic duty to protect the health and safety of her players. Fans have noticed. Sponsors have noticed. Even casual observers who barely follow sports have noticed, because the Clark effect is that powerful. My own inboxes are filled with stories of moms and grandmothers who never watched a game of basketball in their lives, but now schedule their evenings around Caitlin Clark. That's the kind of cultural resonance that no marketing department can manufacture. And yet the WNBA seems intent on squandering it by allowing jealousy and hostility to dictate policy. Meanwhile, Clark's jersey sales remain at the top of the charts. Her games set records even when she isn't on the floor, and the Fever, a team that languished in obscurity for years, has suddenly become a marquee attraction on national television. All of this underscores the absurdity of the league's failure. They are biting the hand that feeds them, alienating the very player who guarantees their future. The comparisons to other sports scandals are inevitable. We've seen cheating scandals in baseball, doping in cycling, and game fixing in soccer. But rarely have we seen a professional league accused of orchestrating or enabling a racially motivated campaign against its own biggest star. If proven, this would make the WNBA not just incompetent but corrupt at its core. An institution that values ideological control and old guard, pride more than fairness, safety, or the long-term survival of the league itself. Federal investigators, circling like vultures around WNBA headquarters, isn't just a metaphor, it's a looming reality. If Engelbert and Silver continue to do nothing, and when that hammer falls, Caitlin Clark may not just win games on the court, she may win the legal battle that rewrites the future of professional women's basketball entirely, potentially even ending Engelbert's career and forcing structural reforms that bring accountability, fairness, and basic safety back into the equation.
Clark sidestepping three is good. After missing 3 games.
When Stephen A. Smith, arguably the most influential and recognizable voice in all of sports media, stood up on his national platform and declared that the United States government might actually have a civil rights case against the WNBA for its treatment of Caitlin Clark, the shockwaves rippled far beyond the boundaries of women's basketball. Because Stephen A. does not throw around federal accusations lightly. He does not casually invoke the possibility of Department of Justice involvement unless there is a real sense that serious federal laws may have been broken, and his words immediately reframed what many had dismissed as a basketball controversy into a potential national scandal with legal, financial, and cultural consequences that could shake the foundations of professional sports in America. And, when you consider the sheer size of his audience, millions of viewers who treat him as the pulse of sports opinion, it means this isn't just one analyst venting frustration. It's the most powerful megaphone in sports media telling the entire country that what has happened to Caitlin Clark might not just be unfair. It might be criminal, it might be discriminatory, and it might justify government intervention at the highest level. The fact that his comments came on the heels of a former White House staffer, a seasoned political insider who understands how federal civil rights investigations work, calling for DOJ involvement only adds gravity, because government insiders don't risk their credibility by pushing for public investigations unless they believe there is compelling evidence that federal laws are being violated. And when someone with that level of knowledge starts using words like civil rights violations, you know this is far more than a sports debate. This is a potential case file already being built, one that could lead to subpoenas, depositions, court hearings, and a permanent scar on the WNBA's reputation as a professional sports league. Imagine what it means if the Department of Justice actually opens a civil rights case against the WNBA. The league's independence would be destroyed overnight, replaced by government oversight that would monitor every officiating crew, every league policy, every disciplinary decision. The financial penalties could be catastrophic, not just fines, but settlements that could drain the league's fragile coffers. Criminal charges could be filed against league executives, referees, or even players who participated in the conspiracy of silence. And Kathy Engelbert, the commissioner, already under siege, would not just lose her job but might find herself lawyering up to avoid prison time. Because if federal prosecutors determine that her inaction amounted to complicity in a racially motivated, hostile work environment, that is no longer a question of incompetence, but of criminal negligence and dereliction of duty. The irony is staggering. The WNBA has never been more dependent on a single player than it is on Caitlin Clark. Yet every time Clark has been targeted into injury, every time she has been left unprotected by referees, every time she has been forced to miss games, the numbers prove beyond any doubt who is carrying this league on her back. With television viewership dropping a jaw-dropping 55% when she was absent, arena attendance cratering without her presence, and merchandise sales stalling the moment she is sidelined, meaning the league is systematically sabotaging its own golden goose out of a toxic cocktail of jealousy, resentment, and racial animosity, effectively engaging in economic self-destruction in full view of the American public. And if that isn't evidence of a conspiracy fueled by motives beyond basketball, then what is? The officiating patterns have been so blatant that even casual fans who only tune in occasionally can see it. Clark is hacked across the arms, shoved to the ground, shoulder checked off the ball, and yet the whistles remain silent, while on the other end phantom fouls are called on her, her teammates, and her team's opponents. A dual standard so outrageous that analysts have openly accused referees of discrimination on live broadcasts. And when referees consistently swallow their whistles on obvious flagrant fouls against one player but call ticky-tack fouls on others, you're not looking